As you open your eyes and are momentarily confused, since it's as dark outside as it is inside your room, you slowly come to and remember that you were just taking a disco nap in preparation for the long night ahead. You slowly crawl out of bed and reach for your clothes that you laid out a few hours before. As you get dressed, heat up the coffee machine, and check yourself in the mirror, you start to feel the anticipation of meeting your friends and heading out for the night. As you get ready to lock your door, you double check that you have everything: money, ID, phone, and keys. You lock the door, head down to the street. You start to text the crew that you're meeting while you wait for the train. One friend texts back that the line is long and they're already holding a spot. You get off the train, quickly walk in the direction of the club, as you start to hear muted moments of music and find your friend waiting patiently in line amongst tons of other people, frantically worried if they will even get into the club. You watch people ahead of you get turned away for no apparent reason. You hear conversations around you, only amplifying your own anxiety about getting in. After some time, you reach the door. The bouncer looks you up and down, asks you some questions, and nods you past into the ticket area. You made it. You start to hear the music in the background thumping away, almost echoing in the distance. You head to the wardrobe, check your coat, make sure once again that you have everything you need for the next extended hours of dancing. As you take off your coat, you feel the energy and even temperature changing around you. You walk out of the wardrobe and start to move deeper into the darkness. The music gets louder as you head up the stairs. The lights are now fully strobing as you enter the dance floor and try and find your bearings amongst the heaving bodies all around you. You walk around looking for familiar faces, and you start to explore where you can dance, where the sound hits you just the way you like. It took a little bit of time, but you found it. As you melt into the communal pulse of the dance floor and the music around you, some of you may already know what I'm about to say. Most who know me already know my views on this subject and why many of you are even here today or watching this in the future. What might seem like an easy point of opinion or way of being is much more than that. Phones, and specifically the overuse of them in our clubs and safe spaces, have brought up new issues of privacy, safety, community, and even general etiquette that needs to be addressed. I'm aware that no one really likes being told what to do, myself included. Unfortunately, we were all handed these devices some years ago and never told how to act or treat our time with them. The reality is, we were all given access to an unlimited camera roll with immediate access to video, social media, streaming capabilities, and were completely let run wild. Only in the past few years have we really started to see articles written, topics discussed, and communities set standards and rules demanding a more thoughtful approach to how we use these devices in our hands. We only recently have concrete evidence and statistics to back our opinions up and see a need for actual solutions. Enough time has passed now that we can clearly see the positive as well as the negative effects of having these technologies. Since the release of my Enjoy Right Now campaign and subsequent essay in Accelerator, I've been interviewed for university research papers and various projects revolving around the idea of limiting phone use in musical environments and over my general thoughts on the social impact of phones use. The last few inquiries were specifically from the perspective of a much younger audience. Much of this younger generation in the dance community are expressing their concerns and talking about this issue on a very high level. They're being educated on and researching the effects of this phenomenon that's been evolving over the last 20 years. They were actually the first generation to be given some type of direction and asked to think about their behavior when it comes to how they socially interact with the world versus the world through the screen of their smartphone. In speaking with these people half my age, I started to see something that actually gave me hope and changed my outlook to a much more positive one. 5 years ago, I wrote this Accelerator essay titled Real Talk out of pure frustration. Things felt like they were getting out of hand. I didn't see it changing for the better. It was actually getting progressively worse, and I was at the end of my wit with everything. Our events started to feel more like concerts instead of dance floor or club experiences. Everyone holding up phones, DJs filming every moment, and promoters obsessed with how an event looked over actually how it felt. We are not a concert, and we don't need to be treated as such. This should be a shared experience, and you can't do that if everyone is selfishly filming and distracted. The glow of screens in the dark or the random flashlight from a phone breaking the atmosphere started to become too much. Fast forward 5 years, and more people are speaking out about this issue, not just in the underground, but even commercially successful music acts, comedians, entertainers from all walks of life are demanding phone bans at their shows. They're making it very clear where they stand and where the focus should be during their performance. Some modern companies have already developed phone locking pouches that lock phones only to be unlocked in designated phone spaces to promote audience awareness. Other performers have just vocally requested it as they start. Some have demanded signage and flyers to remind audiences. For the most part, attendees seem to respect the requests. And when they're asked how they felt about it after, they've clearly stated they appreciated the more focused environment. In 2018, a survey by Eventbrite showed that more than 70% of adults found it irritating when others constantly took pictures and video during performances. And a large minority of those respondents understood why an artist might not like videoing or photographing at the event during their performance. But still, a few spaces enforce a rule against phones or a compromise to have designated areas in the rare emergency that someone should really actually need their phone. Think for a moment about our psychological tendency to pose for a picture. We act differently once we know the camera's out. It becomes muscle memory for people to adjust their stance, fix their hair, smile a certain way, or just simply stop whatever it is they're doing to prepare for the moment the camera's about to snap a photo. We can't stop this immediate reaction, as it's what's embedded into all of us. The same thing happens when you know there are cameras in the club. How can you actually be fully present when you're always on guard? When you're either worried about being filmed or constantly looking for the best moment to film? Let's start with why we're all here in the first place, or at least why I hope we are. We love music. We love the experience of hearing it, feeling it, creating it, and sharing it. Music is the central connection to all of us and what brings us together week in and week out. If music is really the central focus, then why are we not paying it more respect? The idea that music should be the central focus is so simple, in fact, that we can easily overlook it. It's actually already happened that we've put more weight on the proof that we were there rather than actually being there and present. We put so much into proving that we had the best time, saw everyone, heard the best set. How much of our time was misspent trying to capture or think about capturing the perfect moment instead of really being in it fully? If music is the central focus, then demanding a no photo policy on dance floors is just part of the equation. It's no different than making sure your sound and lights are the best, your DJ booth working and ready, your bar set up, and everything else that goes into a night of delivering an experience to people. The idea that you're curating an experience for people and making music the central focus can and should be respected by audiences who attend. In this current decade of electronic music, I would confidently say Berlin as a city has instituted the most culturally parallel rule at most venues playing electronic music. The city in general has made it a norm that you don't take pictures inside of clubs. Most venues use stickers, but at a minimum have signs up everywhere once you walk in. When I've spoken to Berliners who traveled abroad to experience clubs, they're always shocked at how spoiled they are with this phone and camera etiquette they come from. Most other cities, barring a few select places, don't have these rules in place, and therefore the audience isn't trained to follow this. I can't even blame the audience if they haven't been told what rules to follow. The reality is that they're carrying on how they act in their daily lives into the club. Unless venues start to accept that musically driven spaces should make this a rule, we cannot expect our audiences to follow on their own. So who sets the rules? The responsibility to make a no photo policy actually falls into the hands of a few groups. Even in places that don't have set rules or guidelines, consider that your actions in a communal space affect everybody else. If this idea is something you've never considered before, please realize what influence your behavior has at events and how you choose to act translates onto the dance floor and to every single person around you. Some of you, I have to commend, are very present and have recognized the power of being immersed on the dance floor. If you have to use your phone or stay connected, please move to the side. Find a discreet space, dim your screen, and don't let your needs come before everybody else's. It's actually as straightforward as this. Pulling out your phone, your camera, shining your light. It's all very selfish behavior. For example, when I'm DJing, I always have my phone light turned on and ready to go next to me, in the case that someone in the crowd tries to film with their light on. As a way to mirror how it feels, I end up shining my light back in their direction. It's blinding, it's disruptive, and it's an invasion of their privacy. The action is usually enough to make the photographer stop. Most people don't really understand what it's like to be on the other side of that light until they are. And I don't like to generalize or make overarching policies, but because photos do infringe on private personal space, it's so much safer to use this all or nothing rule. Because unfortunately, we cannot make a never-ending list of do's and don'ts. It just doesn't work. We should use this to our advantage because there are so few spaces left to go where you actually don't need to be on your phone. The easiest and most simple solution is to have a blanket rule that covers everything in order to encourage you to enjoy being exactly where you are right now. So organizers and the people behind the scenes are actually the ones that have the power to make these changes and to look after our culture. First of all, artists, you have a right to demand this. I understand that some artists don't feel they have the power to push something like this. Maybe they're just starting out, getting their first few gigs, or playing for new promoters. But if you have the opportunity to request this, do it. Don't be scared or intimidated to ask if this would make you feel more comfortable. If there are other artists on the bill, reach out to them. Ask them if they might also be happy to see this implemented. If you have an agent, request this rule to your agent on your night. For example, if a singer of a live band were to request no light on the stage while they were performing, or a certain color filter to wash out the stage at any given point, they would get it. It's part of the act. As a DJ, think about how you feel best represented, what kind of atmosphere you want to create to help you perform at your best, and what vibe you want if the roles were reversed and you found yourself on the dance floor. Agents, you're the connection point between the artist and the venue. Beyond just organizing flights and fees, you have the responsibility to consider and push the vision and aesthetic of the artist you represent. Ask them, how do they want to be presented? Ask them what requirements would make them feel most comfortable to perform in and at their best ability. If they say no lights or no cameras, help them achieve the perfect environment by communicating these issues and requests. No matter how small or large your artist is, you have the responsibility to protect them and help push this. Clubs and venues and promoters need to decide where they stand on this issue. I've discussed with a lot of venue owners who have admitted that they are scared that they might alienate a crowd by enforcing a strict no camera policy. If they're a venue that has some more commercial nights mixed in with underground nights, at minimum, they could enforce these policies on their more underground nights with stickers, signage. While I understand their concern, as I've also owned and operated a club many years ago, I'm again going to ask them to consider how many people would they actually lose versus how many other people they might actually gain by creating and supporting these rules. Have they not considered the potential crowd of new loyal clubgoers they could attract? The more new people might flock to the venue because of the freedom and privacy associated with a no camera policy. Again, artists, you can demand it. Agents, please help enforce it. And clubs and venues and promoters, please respect it. Let me go back for one moment to artists. As much as I mentioned the choice artists have to define what they want, artists also need to realize the impact and the responsibility they carry as well, especially once they start to have reach and influence to others. I'm sorry, but I've watched artists completely lose the plot when it comes to social media and how they carry themselves. Posting pictures or videos from every single event they play only perpetuates their fans to do the same thing. I've seen artists who request and repost fan pictures and videos all over Instagram. And by doing this, they're basically encouraging their fans to perpetuate that behavior. If you even slightly believe in the idea of respecting and supporting the reasons behind the no camera policy on a dance floor, then you need to reconsider how you carry yourself as an artist. Your actions have consequences, and it's much bigger than your perceived success on Facebook or Instagram. What kind of example are you setting for the new generation of aspiring artists? That you need to master social media as much as music? If we put all the focus on brands and appearance, then we end up with a bunch of created entertainers and branded talent instead of hardworking, musically gifted artists. If we spend 50% of our time on image validation and likes and comments, how can we actually focus on expanding our musical sensibilities? How could anyone? The social media addiction has diluted so many aspects of our culture. I'm not even saying my way is the right way, but I'm questioning if the current example is right. I'm asking you as the listener to observe, to think a little bit deeper beyond the image. Many of us, many artists, don't abuse their privileges. They don't overpost images or videos online because they choose not to. Artists need to start demanding their space and their image as their own, because we choose our aesthetic, and this creates an impact for future artists, fans, and followers. And again, I'm not by any means saying my generation 20 years ago would have been any better equipped to handle this. All the magnitude of all the new technology that's out now. There would be plenty of artists back then that would have also lost their vision in order to promote their image with the simple click of a phone button. To quote an interview with Mike Banks of the legendary You Are Collective in The Wire magazine, "I don't go in front of the music. I believe that if you put your ego in front of the music and place it in front of the speaker, then the people trying to listen to the music, they can't hear you. They just listen to your ego." Issues concerning our privacy. Let's get to the biggest and the most overlooked issue to come out of this topic. Privacy issues are something that our entire world struggles with at the moment. There have been numerous breaches of our information and our identities via our favorite online platforms over the last few years. We are constantly reminded that everything we do is public. Our posts, our photos, and online communication with one another are all vulnerable and at risk of being accessed at any time. Although privacy seems like a commodity that we're all insured of, organizers of events rarely address this issue at all. There is a huge need for our spaces to be secure and private for people to really feel comfortable to let go and feel free. Let's not forget where this music scene started. This scene and community were built initially out of a need for people that didn't fit into normal society. Many of them felt like outcasts coming from personal hardships, abuse, poverty, hidden sexual identities, and so on. The electronic music community and the venues that supported it were a safe haven. Some still are. As this scene became an industry, gradually more people found it. These safe spaces and places of refuge became exposed to completely different walks of life and infiltrated by the masses. Little by little, the initial understanding of our rules, our ethics and standards and guidelines were completely forgotten. As technology grows rampant, so does the sharing and the overexposure in these places. However, the need for safe spaces has not diminished. When we exploit people's privacy, at the core, it infringes on someone's right of anonymity. Think for a moment outside of your own comfort zone and consider someone who might be intimidated by crowds or is pursuing their own sexual orientation and exploring ways they feel confident in their individual being. Maybe it's something as simple as their comfort level with partying, or even that they just don't want their weekend activities showing up on social media. Imagine this person considering going out for the night, and as much as they love the music, the thought of going out and being susceptible to being broadcast or photographed by strangers might actually stop them from even coming. If they do finally decide to take the risk, come out and find their place in the venue, they will always be on guard because someone could be filming or might take a picture without any notice. I think too many of the gatekeepers of our community have overlooked these concerns of people's privacy and freedom and never thought about the impact of allowing pictures and video beyond their own motivation. We live in a connected society, but only virtually connected through our phones, through social media, through our Facebook friends, and less in real time, in the real world. People still need to escape. They still need to find solace in spaces, in music, in community, and most importantly, in the freedom to be themselves. Guidance and suggestions. So how do we do this? As simple as it may seem, I've seen many venues and promoters hesitate or worry about how their crowd will react to a camera, phone ban in their club. Maybe they're worried about the repercussions and loss of support, or possibly just losing their promotional content. Maybe they just don't want to police anyone or create more work for the staff or for themselves. If your venue or event really wants to pursue a music-first focus and consider the privacy and protection issue, then creating this set of rules can be done with some very simple steps. At minimum, designate the actual dance floor as a no phone, no camera space. This suggests a compromise to the club owner and the club guests. You can create your own no photo phone content, specifically noting the dance floor, and start posting those images first. Then you could spread that around to the rest of the club, at the door, on promotional material. Some of these have taken example from our campaign and design, while many others created unique examples relevant to their style and individual vibe. Another option is to create custom entry stamps with a simple message, something like no photos, on the dance floor, no camera images. If all of this seems like too much work, another option is to sticker the cameras of every person's phone as they enter. Taking a few extra moments to sticker the both front and back phone cameras will ensure attendees will remember to avoid filming the entire night. This sends a clear and direct message and reminds them that there are no pictures allowed inside. It truly only takes a few announcements and creations of this rule to have things run smooth week after week. Regardless of which option you go with, educate your staff, your security, and your door people on how to politely but directly approach guests and how to ask them to respect the new rules. Some clubs go as far as explaining the rules to each and every person when they enter. It might be obvious to some, but there's a reason clubs like Berghain, Bassiani, and De School here in Amsterdam, and many others have the amazing reputation that they do. Not only are they musically focused, but they allow for complete freedom inside their spaces. Copying the ideals and practices of these venues is admirable and completely okay. We are all influenced by our surrounding. So acquiring good practices and policies from examples that we respect is absolutely encouraged. I'm sure you've heard it said 1,000 times about how things were better back then. I've read stories of people describing dance floors before the advent of phone photography and of the surrounding issues, describing crowds completely lost in the music and the moment. And I've seen it firsthand over my 2+ decades of experience in this scene. Even as recently as a few weeks ago, Pioneer released a video documenting successful artists and promoters talking about the need to escape social media and the literal addiction that our phones have become on dance floors. Many of the interview artists even admitted to being part of the problem, but had come around to the reality and the truth of this discussion. They were unanimously in agreement that dance floors and truly shared experiences needed some commonplace rules that would make things exponentially better. Shortly after, a major electronic music magazine released an article asking if we should ban phones off the dance floors completely. So if you think it's just me up here on a soapbox reminding people about the change that needs to happen, it's no longer the case. And in creating this presentation, I was reminded by all the images of the club posters I saw and the articles I was reading that this topic is no longer fighting for space. It's now part of our conversation, and that it was actually the best time to reinforce the message. To some of you, this will already be what you think and how you see things. To others who might be on the fence, I hope and wish that you truly take the time to think about this on a deeper level and see how your actions can affect everybody around you. As much as this might have sounded negative or come out speaking negatively, I do want to end on a positive note. If you look back at all the past musical revolutions that have come and gone, most of us just read about them after their demise. We would pick up a magazine 1 year after punk was exclaimed dead, or after disco became commercial and lost its authenticity. But the benefit to our connectivity and sharing now is that we don't have to read about the end of the electronic music scene and it completely going in the wrong direction. We have the ability to share and discuss things that protect our community in real time and stop the ship from sinking before it happens. Thank you very much for listening and considering my point of view.